Telegram.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Temple Daily Telegram High School Football Podcast. Is that what we've been calling it, basically?
I think so.
I think, yeah, something.
It varies week to week.
Yeah. But here we are for another podcast. Josh Weaver and Daniel Zepeda
Hello.
and Marcus Hood.
Howdy.
Awesome. That's a great variation on your greeting. I like it. We are into week 9 of 1A through 4A and week 5 of Class 6A. District 12 6A got underway last week. Temple and Belton both picked up victories. 11-3A1 got no clearer. Solato wrapped up a playoff spot and had another impressive victory.
Big win.
Rogers kept itself in the playoff mix with a big victory, and so on. We'll get to all of that and more over the next 3 hours tonight.
Oh, please no.
Or,
Wow. You guys can stay here 3 hours. I will not be here.
but first, Marcus,
Yes.
please give us a recap of last week's results. Please.
All right. Last week's results. Some teams won, some teams did not.
It's typically
Thank you
how it
very
goes.
much.
All right.
Daniel.
Yeah.
We'll start at the top, of course. The Temple Wildcats still on a roll. 55-21 over Copperas Cove. Belton in another close, tight ball game. 33-26 over Killeen. Those Tigers, they're giving me gray hairs, and I'm not even covering them this year. Solato 28-14 over China Spring. Gatesville 17-6 over Robinson. Big one for Gatesville. The Hornets. Conley beat Gerald 56-22. That's Waco Conley, by the way. Troy in overtime edges Cameron Yo 21-20. Academy beats Caldwell 48-22. Rogers, like I said, 33-27 over Lexington. Rosebud Lot 34-27 over Moody. Bruce Villetti had to forfeit this week's game to Thorndale because of COVID issues. In that district, the district rules say if you can't play, you forfeit. And for the tiebreaker points wise, it's recorded as a 15-point victory for Thorndale. Of course, UIL and NCAA rules state it's basically a 1-0 forfeit. But for points wise, it goes down as a 15-0 win for Thorndale.
And the reason why it was a forfeit was because there was no makeup date available.
Correct.
For Bruce Villetti.
Yeah, that district didn't have one built into the system like a lot of these districts did. And so it was just a matter of if they were going to be able to kind of squeeze it in, and they did not. So Bruce Villetti confirmed they're not going to make it up. So
Yep.
they're going to have to forfeit. They did say they're going to be playing Moody this week for sure.
All right.
Of course, they thought they were going to be playing Thorndale until
Up until the day.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
It is what it is.
That's 2020 in a nutshell. It is what it is.
Big old rotten nutshell.
And remember, this year's kind of started with an impeachment trial. Oh, wait. Granger, 43. Iola, 16. Central Texas Christian School, 55. John Paul II, 14. That just sounds like a mismatch when you're playing one guy.
Well, yeah, I mean, plus there was the second, it wasn't the first. So,
Right. I mean,
yeah.
I would not name my school after, Pope or John Paul. Or,
We got to get the cricket sound effect going. Like we got to find a way to do that. We got to be better.
sorry, we're just reading the scores at this point still. Austin Veritas 42, Holy Trinity Catholic 26. And that game was kind of a rescheduled mismatch thing type of deal. They got that one in. Lake Belton 42, and San Antonio Central Catholic 2.
Thank you, Marcus.
Hey, you're welcome.
And for this week, we have in District 12 6A, Bryan at Temple, Copperas Cove at Belton, and these are all on Friday. All games are on Friday this week, and every area team, knock on wood, is scheduled to play.
Well, they are scheduled to play. That doesn't
But
change.
will they play?
Right.
Well, sometimes we have teams that are idle. No idle teams
Correct.
this week. So as I was saying, in District 9-4A2, Solato is at Gerald, and Gatesville is at Waco Connolly. In 13-3A, 1 Academy at Rockdale, Lorena at Cambronneau, and Troy is at Caldwell. In 13-3A2, Rogers is at Riesel. And in 12-2A1, see, I don't have my regular schedule list because that's not updated anymore, so I'm doing it off this picks list. Which
you're doing good to remember the district, so that's pretty impressive.
In 12-2A1, Rosebud Lot is at Holland, and Bruce Villetti is at Moody. In 13-2A2, we have Snook at Bartlett and Burton at Granger. And down in some 6-man, 14A Division 2, Dime Box is at Buckholtz. And non-district, Lake Belton at Katie Jordan. CTCS is at Marble Falls JB. And Holy Trinity Catholic at Central Texas Centex Homeschool.
Actually, the Holy Trinity Catholic,
okay,
they are actually playing Lucas Christian Academy.
Thank you, Marcus.
You're welcome.
That is information that would have been
breaking news,
extremely helpful 3 minutes ago when I started reading.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if y'all had gotten the message that that game had been rescheduled because me and Eric were here yesterday looking this up, and you guys were not, and we forgot to.
Did I have my headphones in transcribing?
I think you were watching some exciting volleyball at the time.
Okay.
Wait, there's other sports going on besides football?
Yes, there are.
Did you know high school girls basketball started up?
They did. I saw
Practices,
yeah.
A number of tweets today.
Yes.
So it's exciting times.
Yep.
Schedules are coming out. We're getting to find out what's going on there. And volleyball playoffs are about to begin. Teams clinching playoff spots.
Yep.
It's a fun time of the year.
Yeah, it's something. It's a time of the year.
It's something.
Real quick, other results in 12-6A last week for those Temple and Belton fans. Bryan beat Harker Heights 28-21, and Shoemaker beat Ellison 21-17. So after 1 week, Temple, Belton, Shoemaker, and Bryan are 1-0 in district. Cove, Heights, Killeen, and Killeen-Ellison 0-1. And Bryan, Temple's opponent, hadn't played in 3 weeks, and then in his first game back, ends up beating Harker Heights by 7, which is says something about the Vikings, maybe, with what they have this year.
Yeah, they were ready to go.
Yeah, and speaking of what they have, is a pretty good sophomore quarterback that I talked to Temple coach Scott Stewart about this week. We kind of reflected on Copperas Cove game, 55-21 victory, and then moved on to Bryan pretty quickly after that. But that sophomore quarterback over there for the Vikings, Malcolm Gooden, he passed for 146 yards, rushed for 157, and had a hand in 4 total TDs. So pretty good performance for that.
Not too shabby.
Player last week. But Bryan, what it brings to Wildcat Stadium coming up this week is an offense that's gonna want to run first to set up the pass, kind of like what Copperas Cove does. And Scott Stewart was complimentary of Bryan's offensive line, kind of a big, sturdy offensive line. He was impressed with the way that unit performed last week. Defensively, Stewart described him as fast and physical, kind of like to run downhill. And that's nothing Temple hasn't seen thus far. Temple's seen some pretty good defenses this year to date. But as far as Temple goes, last week they got off to a fast start, which is going to be a key in this one as well. Last week Temple led Cove 24-0. What Temple doesn't want to do this week is get in one of those lulls like it had last week.
Second quarter.
Against Cove when the Bulldogs outscored them 21-7, made that game a lot closer at halftime, 31-21. That it looked like it was going to be. Temple responded in the second half with another 24 straight points for an easy victory. So, what I'm looking for as far as Temple is concerned is another fast start and kind of keep that consistency through the 4 quarters. We've talked about that a lot with the teams we cover this year, Daniel.
Right.
Temple and Belton is putting together 4 quarters. Temple, once it's ahead, it wants to stay ahead and be convincing while it's happening. The other thing I've been kind of noticing and impressed with Temple is its defensive line. The Wildcats have been really sturdy up front, and they're going to need that again this week against Bryan. That's going to throw a few different backs at the Wildcats in this one. But Temple with a really good opportunity to go 2-0 in district, which obviously is the goal this week. Just keep building and go from 1-0 to 2-0, and then move on to the next one. As far as Belton is concerned, Daniel, last week was huge. Playing a Thursday game on the road against Killeen, coming off of 3 straight losses to open the year. Last week was a time for Belton to get things going, and the Tigers did that, with a few tense moments along the way.
Oh yeah, well, like Marcus had mentioned, it's so far this season, you just don't know really what to expect from Belton. They got off to a big lead, led 19-9 at halftime, led 20-26-9 about midway through the third quarter. Really kind of looked like that game was in hand. And then all of a sudden, turnovers, self-inflicted momentum shifts that really kind of dampen the Tigers' push there.
Yeah,
really started to move more in favor towards Killeen there.
And it started with the kickoff return, right?
Yeah, exactly.
After Belton made it 26-9.
Yeah,
Killeen.
26-9.
And
Killeen comes immediately back with that kickoff return.
We saw that a couple weeks ago when Temple played Arlington Martin. It was a 15-15 game there.
Yeah.
Arlington Martin gets its first of 2 kickoff returns.
Yeah.
And that first one just unleashed a string, that went against Temple, and, it almost went that way last week.
Yeah. And, I mean, like you said, 26-9, then they get that kickoff return. Belton follows that with a fumble. They lost 3 fumbles on the night, as well as throwing a pair of interceptions. So, Coach Sniffen really emphasized it. It's really hard to win ball games, especially in district, whenever you're giving the ball away 5 times. And I think all 5 of those turnovers came within the 20-yard line. Right. And so pretty much knocking on the door there, which are just definitely just rally killers, because Belton, that's what they like to do. They like to just play smash mouth football. They run the ball. Occasionally they'll pass it just to kind of, like you said, to set up the pass. So they like to chew a lot of clock, and then when you have a turnover like that, it really kind of lets the air out of the building. So Killeen comes and ties it at 26 about midway through the fourth quarter. Belton comes back, throws an interception. Killeen can't convert on 4th down on their next possession. So, the Tigers get the ball with just under 4 minutes to go, and that offense really clicks there. It was essentially, give the ball to Ruben Jimenez, the dual threat quarterback, and just say, hey, if the pass is there, go for it. But if it's not, make something happen with your legs. And he did. The Tigers score with 51 seconds left. Killeen gets it to about midfield, throws an interception, which is picked off by Trent West there at the end. And, just like that, Belton has its first win of the season, and first under new head coach Brett Sniffen.
Yeah, and that's one of those drives that you hope, carries over into the next game,
for sure.
Sets the tone for practice, and then going into this week's game against Cove, because Belton needed something.
They really did. And again, talking to Coach Sniffen, turnovers, man, just self-inflicted things that they really have no one to blame but themselves. That's going to be a key as they face the tougher teams in this district. If they're looking to get back into the playoffs, they want to get off to a good start. They've played behind in several games, so they definitely don't want to do that. They want to limit the turnovers, especially the turnovers that come when they're pretty much knocking on the door to score touchdowns. And one big positive though was that defense, which has been a big emphasis this season for Belton as far as shoring up and getting better. They had a bunch of turnovers. They had 3 interceptions, a bunch of sacks, a bunch of tackles for loss. Malik Jackson, Charles Williams III on the defensive line really kind of wrecking havoc. Joe Sniffen, linebacker, had a interception that he returned 18 yards for a touchdown. So just a bunch of guys that really took advantage of a kind of a pedestrian Killeen offense. I think they'll get better as it goes on, but they faced tougher offenses this year, and I think it showed. But man, if they can take care of the football and just kind of do what they are capable of doing. Coach said they have the potential to be a dang good football team. It's just, can they put it all together?
Yeah. You got a couple players to watch coming up in this one, as far as Belton's concerned.
Well, they got that. Copperas Cove has their quarterback, which kind of a dual threat guy. You saw him last week with Temple.
Yeah, Shane Ritchie.
But he went out with an injury. So,
at halftime. Yeah.
What did you see? I think he was able to walk away.
He got off. Yeah, he got up. He got sandwiched between two defenders. I mean, it was a pretty big hit, and he was down for 3 or 4 minutes or whatever, but walked off under his own power. I'm sure it was, you don't want to speculate on injuries, but it looked kind of precautionary and things like that.
Okay.
We'll just wait and see. Belton,
Yeah, not sure if he's playing this week for sure or not, but he kind of makes that offense go.
Yeah.
Another dual threat guy. And then I think they have, I don't remember names, but they got
running backs.
Couple running
Brandon
backs.
Ortega is one of them. But actually, Cove's defense, even though it was, gave up a bunch to Temple last week, the corners played pretty well, considering, Temple's got multiple weapons out there at receiver. But, it should be a good game. Cove's got a really big offensive line. I mean, those guys are pretty stout all the way across.
Yeah.
And that's another team, like we mentioned, wants to run the ball first and then to set up the pass. But
yeah, I think another thing just to watch real quick is just going to be Belton likes to run the football. They like to run behind that offensive line, which is really starting to gel and come together with some new guys there. In Copperas Cove on their defense, Sniffen said they got a bunch of linebackers who just like to load the box. They like to run downhill, really make life hard on opposing teams to run the ball. So we'll see which one kind of prevails because that's Belton's bread and butter, trying to run the ball, chew clock, and Copperas Cove obviously doesn't want to let them do that.
Yeah, and just back to Temple real quick. I think one of the other keys for the Wildcats this week is just continuing to keep Samari Howard involved in a number of ways. Temple's junior running back has had 3 straight 100-plus yard performances. He even converted 3 two-point conversion runs last week. And when he's on like that, Temple can easily just, spread it out to its receivers with quarterback Humberto Arizmendi and Michael Harrison-Pilot, Luke Allen, A.J. McDuffie, and Tredarius Taylor. Any one of those guys at any time can break a big play. And so when that offense is balanced, I think last week is actually tilted much more to the run. I mean, it might have been about 40 carries to 19 passes. And I think that's when Temple's most effective is when they're running it a good amount, and then letting Arizmendi do his thing with less to worry about, I guess.
Yeah,
when you have the defense kind of thinking a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're an opposing defense, it's kind of like pick your poison. They got a quarterback that can air it out to several athletic playmakers, or they got Samari Howard right there, like you said, who could just take off on you. So it's that. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not a defensive coordinator getting ready for the Wildcats.
No, and that's an offense that's just going to keep getting better as the weeks go on. And speaking about getting better as the weeks go on, I feel like that's what Solato's been doing pretty much from the get-go. The Eagles have been pretty dominant on both sides of the ball, especially the last month once it got into district. I mean, not allowing a whole lot on defense and just, doing all the right things on offense. And last week's win over China Spring clinched Solato's playoff spot. They're 4th in 5 years under Alan Hare. I don't think they can. I mean, it would have to take some interesting results for them to clinch a district championship because there's still one more week in that district to play. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think.
Outright.
Yeah, an outright thing. They might be able to clinch a share, I guess.
Yeah.
With a victory over Gerald this week. But.
Right. They can pretty much. Lock up the top seed anyway.
Yeah, right.
This week.
Yeah, since they beat China Spring and Connolly the last 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And you were at that game against China Spring last week. I mean, what stood out to you as far as Solato's concerned and what they're doing?
Really, I mean, they, like you kind of said, their defense has really kind of picked up, and that's one area that they're going to have to be strong at heading forward in the playoff-wise. I mean, China Spring, we all know, I mean, they kind of have a two-headed monster with their quarterback and running back. Abdallah, I believe was his last name. And, I mean, he had been averaging, he has been putting up ridiculous numbers, and they just held him in check. He was not getting anywhere. And that's the thing that Solato was doing so well, and their slot T offense was just clicking. The only the only thing that their timing was off on a little bit of plays, so they had probably about 4 or 5 false starts, which with that kind of offense, you kind of expect that.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen, yeah. Because it's kind of get up to the line, snap the ball, and go.
But being behind the chains in that offense is not what you want either. Because you're chipping away at those 15 yards through the with the run mostly.
That's the other thing, and I mean I know it sounds kind of crazy, but their passing game was actually a little bit off. And of course, for one, and I'll explain that in a second. But there was a point, like at halftime, where they were actually had more passing yards than China Spring, and Solato's never going to have more passing yards than the team. But by the end of the night, it was still pretty close. But I say that their passing game was off because they threw the ball like 5 times, and each time there were the receptions, but on the rest of them, either Hutton Hare just kind of overthrew his guy by a few feet, and or the receiver just kind of got under the ball. It was like that did not look right. It just And I mean, you don't pass a lot, so it's understandable. But I mean, if they can get that down, when a slot T offense passes the ball and they've got it going on, the receivers are going to be wide open, which is the case, and that's why it looked off, because Hare was just kind of underthrowing his guys, overthrowing his guys, and you're like, okay, these should be scores each time. But they're clicking on all cylinders. They have so many weapons that can run the ball, and if you're a defense, you talk about hating to be a defensive coordinator. There's ways you defend the slot T, but the thing to do it, the way to do it is each back. I mean, the linebackers key on one specific guy, basically, because there's so much misdirection and things, and
you kind of hope it's the right one.
Yeah, I mean, well, each linebacker picks a guy, basically. The middle linebacker basically has either the quarterback or the main running back, and then the other 2 are watching the slot guys, basically. In most defensive setups, it's not necessarily exactly that way, but that's the way they kind of do it. And Slater just outplayed him, outsmarted him, outran him.
I saw a quote. It might have been in the Waco paper, talking with the China Spring head coach beforehand. No, it was actually after the game. It was after I read your game story, Marcus.
That's fine.
It was just, but he said, the head coach, Coach Bell, I believe. He said something about Solato's kind of been, playing this underdog card all season. But he knew that. There's nothing underdog about Solato going into that game, and that's kind of how it feels with Solato almost every year since Coach Hare has been there. I mean, they're taking care of business so far under the radar, but they're doing it really well, which is kind of what they'd rather be that than have all eyes on them.
Definitely, and to build on that, after the game, I'm sitting next to in the press box, the China Spring, the coordinators, the assistant coaches that are in the box are to my left, and we all kind of leave the press box at the same time, and their coaches were just saying basically Solato was like the best team they've seen. I mean, that they have the ability and the talent to go far in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's not going to surprise any of us if they do, but it's going to – a lot of people are going to start waking up to it, like kind of to build on that. I mean, it's not – a surprise to us, but it might be to other people right now.
And if you're Solato, I mean, you just keep on flying under the radar. Don't want to attract any attention. Just try to take as many teams by surprise, if that's an option at this point anymore.
Yeah. The other 2 teams in our area in that district, Gatesville and Gerald, are currently tied for 4th at 1 and 2. It's going to be both those teams have tough matchups this week to get any separation there, so it might come down to the season finales of those 2 teams, and guess what?
That's who
they play each other. Yeah. So,
of course, if you're Gerald, you kind of hope that maybe Solato is still kind of flying too high after their big win over China Spring this week, because that's who they face.
And that's like kind of one of those proximity rivalries or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there's much of a rivalry, but those schools are pretty close.
Kind of neighbors.
Yeah,
they could build into one quick. Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of another interesting, tidbit from that district, Gatesville and Gerald, vying for that final playoff spot. And speaking of vying for playoff spots,
here we go.
I don't know. I don't know how this is going to get sorted out in 11-3A1. Right now, Rockdale is 2-1, Troy is 2-1, Lorena is 2-1, Academy 2-2, Yo 2-2, McGregor 2-2, and then Caldwell at 0-3. And just as a reminder, Troy's at Caldwell, Academy's at Rockdale, and Lorena's at Cameron Yo.
I think Caldwell's got it in the bag. They're going to the playoffs.
Their season is in the bag.
Might as well be. They're in this district. We're not that bad of a team, but we're just in this bad district.
Yeah. McGregor is idle this week. I'm not sure when the last time Cameron Yo lost 2 district games in a row. But, that's a possibility this week. But, the Yeomen tend to respond pretty well after losses. So that should be a dogfight there. I mean, especially what they say on election night. It's like too early to call. I kind of feel like
that's
been that way all season in this district.
Yeah, and really after this week, I mean, you could have 5 teams that have 2 losses. You could have 2 teams that have 3 losses and 3 that have just 1 loss. There's a whole bunch of scenarios that can play out. You could have really 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 of the teams would have 2 losses in one scenario. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's crazy to look at it, and we'll get a clearer picture after this week. We might not. We might be more confused after this week than ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. I was like emailing one of the coaches, just kind of making sure we had the tiebreaker system intact, and because first tiebreaker is usually always head-to-head. Then if there's a 3-way tie, it goes down to a point system. And the coach that I emailed, he just got back to me. He's like, Marcus, why? Do you think it's going to be needed in this district? Yeah, there's
was
a possibility.
Was there like a LOL and a smiley emoji?
There was a smiley
Put
face.
a little emoji in
there
there.
Was an emoji after it. But it's like, the coaches know. And each one of these coaches right now is in the back of their head. They're thinking, okay, we shouldn't have let this game get away.
Yeah. That
type of thing. And there's like, it's hard not to think about the games that you let get away and still kind of focus on what's ahead of you in this district. And you talk about having to take it 1 week at a time. It's hard for the coaches to do that in this district.
Yeah. I mean, when you just look at that district, I mean, we've got a bunch of games that are already in the bag, but I mean, we've said it before. Any team can literally beat any team on any field in this district. I mean, in any situation, I can see Rockdale beating Troy. I can see Troy beating Rockdale. Academy could beat Lorena. Lorena could beat Academy. Yo and McGregor, that could go either way. Yo versus Rockdale, that could go either way. I mean, some of these have already been played, so we know how they went. But at the same time, any given week, I mean, it could just be, it's a literal toss-up. So, I mean, to try to get a handle on this district, to try to say, Rockdale should get a win this week, or Academy should continue its push through district. I mean, there's just I don't know how you do it. I'm glad I'm kind of not having to decide that, because it is literally just a toss up.
Yeah, and we figured that from the get go, but I'm not sure. I thought it was going to be this convoluted for this long.
Right. There will be no X's by any of these teams' names next week.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's going to come down to that final week for sure. We mentioned it at the beginning. Rogers picked up a big victory last week over Lexington to jump into a tie for 3rd in that district, and Rogers beat the team that it's tied with, Clifton.
Right.
Both those teams are 2-2. Franklin has clinched a playoff spot in that district, 13-3A2. Buffalo is 2nd. 3-0, and then Clifton and Rogers 2-2. Right. So, and Rogers' final 2 games come against the bottom 2 teams in the district, Riesel and Florence. We've said it time and again, you don't want to overlook an opponent, but Rogers' path
looking pretty good.
Might be a lot a lot easier than Lexington trying to get back into the playoff picture. Probably
Rogers can actually clinch a playoff spot this week.
Okay.
There's, I think, a couple of scenarios, but the easiest, most likely path is to win, have Buffalo win, which is not going to be
Yeah,
easy because
Buffalo
they're
at
playing
Franklin,
That's
yeah.
going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
And then have Lexington win, which they should do against Florence. But if those three scenarios pan out, then Rogers would have that playoff spot locked up.
You said Buffalo had to beat Lexington?
Correct.
Man, yeah, that would be
No,
Yeah, Buffalo has
had
to beat
Franklin, right?
Buffalo has to beat Franklin. Sorry.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
And Lexington has to beat Florence.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rogers has to beat Riesel, which you'd think they would be able to do that. But
Again, yeah, you never want to,
Right.
like Josh said, overlook an opponent and think too far in advance.
we don't have to overlook them.
In
That's
12
true. We can.
Any,
It just-
any playoff possibilities in 12-2A1 with some of our area teams in that one? Holland, Rosebud Lot, Bruceville, Eddy, Moody.
It's one of those where Holland, if they win, they are pretty much in the playoffs. I mean, there's like, depending on who wins that Bruceville, Eddy, Moody game,
Mm-hmm.
that team could technically win out and maybe tie Holland if Holland loses out and get in that tiebreaker scenario. But for all intents and purposes, Holland with a win is in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The others, Rosebud Light, Bruceville, Eddy, and Moody, they're not done yet, but it's got to be a tough road.
Yeah,
And if you lose this week, you're pretty much done.
right. Granger locked up a playoff spot last week, by far and away. Lions look like the best team in that. 13-2A2, 6-1 overall, 4-0 in district. And that's kind of about it as far as, playoff movement. Our TAPS teams, Central Texas Christian and Holy Trinity, by default or by TAPS rules, are in the playoffs already.
that announcement,
Yeah, last week I guess that came.
yeah.
Which is cool. You're going to get more than the 8 games I think that they were scheduled. Going into the regular season.
Yeah, typically not a big fan of that, but at the same time, with everything that's gone on this year, yeah, I mean, why not? While everyone's trying to be healthy, let's get as many games in as we can.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard to believe that we're coming up on the second to last Friday of October already, and we're 3 weeks away from the start of the 1A and 4A
Yeah,
playoffs. Meanwhile, Temple and Belton are just getting started.
just
in
getting
district.
warmed up, yeah.
I mean, it's good times.
This is one of those years where it's like, normally because of the way football goes and then basketball kind of starts up, even with basketball starting up and the football playoffs, we get a little break kind of in the late Christmas, early January type. We might not get one this year.
No.
Well, I mean, we may be sitting in here meeting on Thanksgiving Day, meeting here on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
No,
just so weird.
I mean, usually we'll get a holiday off, but with Temple and Belton playing their regular season finales the day after Thanksgiving, which is going to be the third round of the 1A 4A playoffs, we might be having our turkey dinner
Yep.
in the office. Christmas Day, if one of our 6A teams happens to make it a couple rounds deep into the playoffs, we could have a game on the 26th of December. So
It's the most
State
wonderful
championships
time.
in 2021.
right,
God.
which is cool. I mean, hey, shake things up, right? I'd rather just not be wearing a mask while it's being shook up, But
I think a lot of people share that sentiment.
yeah, but I'm gonna wear it because
It's the right thing to do.
that's it. Also, you know what the other thing we should do is? Can you just read like a few names and numbers?
If I have the stats, I will. So if somebody,
Oh my God.
I know. I was dealing with technical support.
Preparation. No,
Those-
that's right.
those-
Daniel does
those
get us
IT
set up in
guys.
here
So
with our fancy microphone.
yes. Well, as teams, your offensive area leaders, Rockdale leading the area with 397.3 yards of offense per game. And then on defense, Holland leading the area, allowing 230 yards per game. So, big reason why those teams are succeeding this year.
And I'm sure Coach Talbert's probably like, we shouldn't be allowing that many yards per game.
Oh, yes.
That's
Always.
just J.C. Cheney, or not J.C. Cheney, Coach Cheney up there.
JC, man, he's coaching and playing. Holy smokes. Good for that guy.
His JC's a big reason why they are allowing so few yards, though, that's for sure.
All right, your area rushing leaders for Class 4A and lower. Zach Robotchik out of Troy. He eclipsed the 2,000-yard mark on the season, 2,010 yards, 32 touchdowns. Noah Mesher from Solato, 1,167 yards, 15 touchdowns. Derek Warren, the junior from Jarrell, 1,122 yards, 10 touchdowns. Cameron Valdez out of Rockdale with 906 yards on the season with 15 touchdowns. And rounding out your top five with Christian Riley out of Rogers with 792 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns on the season. So moving on to your top passers in the area. Jerry Cephas from Academy, we've said his name a lot this season, 1,229 yards passing with 14 touchdowns.
Back from an injury.
Yeah, returned full-time last week from an injury. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know the Bees are excited to
had a really good game.
Yeah, having him back. Zane Zeinert out of Cameron Yo, 1,223 yards passing with 15 touchdowns. Kobe Mitchell from Rockdale, 1,112 yards, 12 touchdowns. Connor Cruz from Lake Belton with 1,015 yards passing on the season with 17 touchdowns. And Thomas Rhodes, the dual-threat quarterback from Granger, 959 yards passing with 12 touchdowns. And a cool little tidbit here, Luke Mullins from Gatesville, he has 10 touchdowns passing on the season to lead the Hornets. Moving on now to your top yards receiving players for the season. Jalen McWilliams leads the area in that category out of Academy, 657 yards receiving with 11 touchdowns. As I look through these numbers, he looks like he's the only one with double-digit touchdown catches on the season, so good for him. Zachorian Spikes out of Cameron Yo, 538 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. Keyshawn Raven out of Rockdale, 465 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns. Jaden Simmons, the tight end from Academy, 463 yards, 4 touchdowns. And Jordan Landrum out of Rosebud Lot, he has 462 yards and 5 touchdowns on the season.
Class 2A state player.
Yeah, I saw that tweet and you had it earlier. Built for Tough, 2A Player of the Week. Jordan Landrum.
Yeah, and part of that's because of a pretty impressive interception he had against Bodie as well. Just kind of, I mean, he does it all: wide receiver, defensive back.
Yeah, there wasn't there one game he had like 2 or 3 interceptions or something?
Was that
like
him? Yeah, he had.
And I think a kick return for a touchdown that same game. I think.
I mean, it was pretty much like a touchdown.
Rosebud Lot's been putting up some serious numbers.
Yeah, they got a few athletes out there for sure.
Yeah, and if you like numbers. Temple Daily Telegram, our website, tdtnews.com. Is that our website?
I believe so.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
tdtnews.com.
All these stats are online. Temple Belton stats there as well, and also in our weekly notebooks that Daniel and I produce, and various other places, Twitter, Facebook, things like that.
A lot of good stuff. Got Temple Belton features this week as well.
Yep.
So Temple and Belton at home this week. So going to be a good week of football.
Yep. Everyone enjoy your games and come back next time.
Go team.
Thanks for listening.